The Young and the Restless spoilers next week. Spoilers July 28 to August 1, 2025. When the blood of Damian Cain stained the cold floor of that French estate, it didn't just mark the end of one man's life. It cracked open a fault line that would shake Genoa City all the way from the marble corridors of Newman Towers to the quiet corners of Memorial Hospital. The murder investigation that had kept the city's attention fixed on Nice for days was finally winding down. Soon, the dust would settle, suspects would be cleared or condemned, and life, at least on the surface, would return to normal. But grief moves slower than headlines, and no one knew this better than Nate Hastings. For him, the moment came in silence, a knock at the door followed by a voice he recognized too well. It was Lily, her tone restrained, her presence quiet but urgent. Nate didn't ask why she was there, he already knew. Somewhere between the way her eyes refused to meet his and the tension in her breath, the truth was already screaming. And when she finally said the words, "Damian is gone," Nate stood still, numb. He didn't cry. He didn't shout. He simply let the weight of it fall into his chest like a stone sinking in deep water. It wasn't supposed to be like this. He and Damian had found peace after so much distance and uncertainty. The awkwardness that once colored their every exchange had faded, replaced by mutual respect and the kind of guarded affection that only grows between two men who once doubted they were even family. Damian had opened up. He had trusted Nate with parts of himself that no one else had ever seen. And now, that trust was a memory. Stolen by someone's rage, someone's vengeance. Nate wasn't sure what hurt more. The fact that Damian had died alone in a foreign country, or the knowledge that he would now have to be the one to destroy the world of the woman Damian loved most. The name alone made his stomach turn. Amy, who had faced her illness with strength and fire, who had believed that she and Damian could have a future, however short it might be. She had made peace with her mortality. But no one ever makes peace with the sudden death of someone they love. Especially not like this. Especially not a murder. Telling her would be the hardest thing Nate had ever done. And he had done plenty. So he waited, walking the hospital halls longer than necessary, rereading the medical charts, refilling his coffee, avoiding the inevitable. But when he entered her room and saw her smile, weak but genuine, he knew he couldn't hide it. She asked about Damian before he even opened his mouth. It was her first question, always. "Did he text you?" She asked, her voice laced with worry masked by hope. He promised he'd call when he got out of that awful party. And then Nate broke. Not with tears, but with silence. The kind of silence that turns a hospital room into a tomb. And Amy knew. She knew before he said it. Knew before he reached for her hand. Knew when his eyes turned glassy and his voice dropped an octave lower than usual. Her heart fractured in real time, and no painkiller in the world could dull it. She screamed. Not loud, but sharp. A single, suffocating sound that broke something sacred in the air between them. Nate told her everything he could, how Damian had been found in the freezer, how the authorities believed it was deliberate, not an accident, not a burglary gone wrong. How suspects were being questioned but no one had yet been charged. But those words meant nothing to Amy. Her Damian was dead. And with him, the last pieces of the future she had allowed herself to imagine. In that moment, cancer became a background noise. Her grief eclipsed the disease. Her rage overpowered her fear. Meanwhile, in Genoa City, Jack Abbott made a decision that reminded everyone why he remained one of the city's quiet heroes. In the midst of chaos and confusion, he stepped forward to shield Billy from the fallout of a risky decision gone wrong. Billy, always volatile, had gotten too close to the fire while chasing leads on who really killed Damian. He had gone to war with Victor, accused Cain publicly, and crossed too many lines. And when the legal heat intensified, Jack intervened, claiming responsibility for the leaked files Billy had released to the press. It was a selfless act, one that could damage Jack's reputation, but he didn't flinch. Family mattered more. And protecting Billy meant protecting the last thread of peace he had left. Not everyone understood the move. Victor certainly didn't. He considered it weakness. Another example of the Abbott family's emotional indulgence. But for those who truly knew Jack, it was a final stand for decency in a city that too often rewarded cruelty. It was an act that didn't demand recognition. Just results. Across town, in a quiet, polished conference room at Newman Enterprises, a different kind of confrontation was unfolding. Adam and Victoria, two siblings long at war, fueled by legacy, ego, and years of scars neither would admit to, sat across from each other, their voices low but weighted. The tension was undeniable. But exhaustion had finally taken precedence. Adam, for all his cunning and pride, had lost interest in fighting battles that left him cold and alone. Victoria, calculating as ever, recognized the value in a temporary truce. And so, after hours of guarded negotiation, they signed it, a ceasefire. A document outlining shared authority, limited oversight, and mutual respect on paper, if not in blood. The question, of course, was how long it would last. History suggested the answer was not long. But for now, it was a pause. A necessary breath in a family that had been suffocating on its own ambition. And yet, none of it, Jack's sacrifice, Adam and Victoria's fragile peace, the ongoing investigation, could touch the gravity of what had truly happened in Nice. Damian's death had not been an accident. It was premeditated. Targeted. And the reason behind it, still obscured in layers of deceit and betrayal, had yet to surface. Cain's estate remained under scrutiny. Chance was quietly building a new list of suspects, even as the original leads dissolved. The mansion's staff had begun to scatter, some out of fear, others under pressure. And Carter, still the object of online fan suspicion, had yet to be officially named, though whispers persisted that Chance and Victor were circling back to re-interview him. Lily had taken a step back from public appearances, shaken by the unfolding events and burdened by the knowledge that someone she once trusted might have engineered a murder beneath her feet. She blamed herself more than anyone else dared to. And perhaps that was why she was the one who had to break the news to Nate. Perhaps guilt, more than obligation, had driven her to his door. But the truth still waited. And Genoa City, for all its mourning and maneuvering, was merely at the beginning of the reckoning. Damian's death was not an isolated tragedy, it was a catalyst. A spark in the dry fields of long-buried resentment. Amy's grief was now a flame. Nate's determination, a fuse. Jack's loyalty, a shield. And Adam and Victoria's peace? A time bomb with a ticking echo. Nothing ends easily in this city. And nothing stays buried forever. While Damian's murder cast a long shadow across the vineyards of southern France, the opulent hills of Nice provided no sanctuary for the fractured souls of Jack Abbott and his younger brother Billy. The weight of recent events had worn down even the most resilient of minds, and Billy, ever impulsive and restless, responded in the only way he knew how, by shifting blame and searching for reinvention. Jack had hoped that bringing Billy to the estate would offer clarity, if not redemption, but all it did was expose the widening chasm between them. Tensions flared the moment Billy announced, unilaterally, that Sally Spectra would be taking over the day-to-day operations of Abbott Communications. It was a move made without discussion, without consent, and without foresight. Billy claimed he needed freedom, space to collaborate with Cain Ashby in the pursuit of Chancellor's next great opportunity. But everyone knew the truth, it wasn't about business. It was about legacy, control, and desperation. Billy, as always, was chasing something just out of reach. Jack tried to stay measured, reminding himself that his brother had always been volatile, that this wasn't the first reckless decision and likely wouldn't be the last. But this felt different. This wasn't a late-night poker debt or a romantic misstep. This was Billy wagering the family's future, again. With someone like Cain, whose loyalty bet whichever way the wind blew. The irony wasn't lost on Jack, The same Cain who now stood in the epicenter of a murder investigation, the same Cain whose estate was soaked in suspicion, was the man Billy had chosen to align himself with. And it wasn't just a business move. It was personal. Billy was chasing the illusion of independence. He wanted to prove that he didn't need Jack, that he could carve out his own path. But Jack had walked that road before. He knew it led nowhere. There was a moment, brief, almost imperceptible, when Jack considered severing ties. He thought perhaps his presence in Billy's life had become more of a crutch than a support. That maybe the best thing he could do was walk away and let Billy find his own way, however treacherous. But family had a way of pulling him back in. Still, the temptation to cut the cord grew stronger by the day. Jack had made sacrifices for his brother, financial, emotional, professional. But Billy's inability to stay grounded continued to drain whatever was left of their fragile bond. So when word spread that Jack might soon step away, might finally let Billy stand or fall on his own, it wasn't shocking. It was inevitable. Meanwhile, in a surprising turn of events, a new kind of peace was quietly taking root in Genoa City, forged not through blood or paperwork but through a shared weariness of war. Adam and Victoria Newman? Once locked in a bitter dance of sabotage and one-upmanship, had somehow arrived at an unspoken détente. The ceasefire they signed was more than a formality. It was a rare, delicate truce built on empathy, exhaustion, and necessity. While the rest of the Newman clan spiraled through the literal and metaphorical labyrinths of the French countryside, Victoria and Adam had been left behind to keep the home fires burning. And perhaps in that vacuum? Without Victor's iron hand or Nikki's whispered alliances, they found space to simply be siblings. Their bond didn't blossom overnight. It evolved, quietly, out of shared burdens. Adam, despite his many transgressions, had stepped up during the family's absence. He made level-headed decisions. He protected assets. He kept the company's heart beating while chaos ruled abroad. And Victoria, for once, saw it. She saw his effort, his restraint, and most of all, his loyalty. It reminded her of something she rarely let herself feel toward Adam: respect. And in return, Adam softened. He no longer viewed her solely as a gatekeeper to the kingdom. He saw a woman unraveling under pressure, grieving the potential loss of Cole, and fighting to protect her daughter Claire in a world that rarely offered security. His sympathy was real. It was felt in small gestures, in silence, in the way he sat beside her during late meetings without speaking unless spoken to. Their conversations became civil. Then cordial. Then collaborative. Victoria admitted, albeit reluctantly, that Adam had been right about the company's restructuring. Adam, in turn, praised her strategy for international expansion. It was disarming. Strange. And utterly necessary. The ceasefire they signed wasn't a dramatic handshake in front of cameras. It was two initials on a document filed quietly between HR updates and legal memos. But it meant something. It was a declaration that the Newman siblings could, at least for now, put the knives down. Some of that goodwill, surprisingly, came from their shared reflections on family. Victoria confessed, in a rare moment of vulnerability, that she had underestimated Adam's willingness to climb mountains, literally and figuratively, for the people he loved. While Victor, Nikki, and Nick wandered through the emotional labyrinths in France, Adam had grounded the family empire. He hadn't complained. He hadn't plotted. He had simply done the work. And that, perhaps more than anything, earned Victoria's attention. She saw in him the kind of stability she hadn't trusted since before Ashland Lock burned her world down. And Adam? He saw in Victoria a woman still mourning Cole, still trying to bridge the emotional distance between herself and Claire. He understood grief better than most. He saw how it hollowed people out and made them build walls. And he knew better than to try to tear them down with words. So he didn't. He just stayed. Worked late. Offered a kind word when it was needed, and silence when it wasn't. Back in Nice, the palace of glass and stone that Cain had called his sanctuary was beginning to fracture under the weight of public scrutiny. The estate had become a symbol, not just of murder, but of moral erosion. The parties, the secrets, the shadows, it all reeked of something ancient and cursed. And Billy's choice to align himself with that chaos, to chase chancellor opportunities while the estate's very foundation crumbled beneath the weight of suspicion, painted a picture that Jack could no longer ignore. This wasn't ambition. It was a slow slide into oblivion. Jack stood at a crossroads. He could return to Genoa City, reclaim the reins, and cut Billy loose, or he could stay, guide his brother one more time through a fire that might burn them both. And while he hadn't spoken the decision aloud yet, all signs pointed toward sacrifice. Because Jack Abbott, for all his caution and logic, had one fatal flaw: he loved too deeply to walk away. Even when he knew he should. As the week came to a close, Genoa City braced for fallout. Damian's killer remained unnamed. The estate's secrets continued to drip like poison into every conversation. And in the quiet corners of the Newman Tower, two siblings who once hated each other found something resembling peace. For now. Because in this town, no truce lasts forever. And no secret stays buried for long.